Welcome back to In the Big Inning, and this is the second of a two-part series from the first to be born and the first to die. In the last episode, I talked about Nate Birkenstock, the first ever born professional player of all of baseball who was Jewish. Today, I'm going to talk about Herb Gorman. Now, I called it the first to die because of all of the Jewish players, sadly, he was the youngest to pass away at only the age of 28. Gorman was born in San Francisco in December of 1924, and he went to Balboa High School in San Francisco. After high school, he entered military service, joining the Coast Guard, which put his major league ambitions on hold. I want to show you a couple of pieces of Gorman's specific memorabilia about his early life. This is the galleon from 1943. This is from Balboa High School in San Francisco. So this would be the graduate yearbook for Herb Gorman. Really cool to get an item like this, and I think it's full of wonderful information. So let's take a look. First, we're going to look at page 13, and if we want to find Gorman here, there he is. So that was his high school graduation photo, and there's lots more things in here for him, and I'll save the best for last. On page 60, there's the basketball team, and Gorman is on the basketball team sitting in the first row here. And there's also a mention of him down here. With Lederman gone, the Buccaneers tasted their first defeat at the hands of the Parrots by a score of 25-20. Herb Gorman and some others had 5 points each. So that's also a pretty cool reference. And then there's another reference to him with the baseball team, which of course makes a lot of sense that he would be on the team. So he is here in the picture as well. And he is in the third row right here. So that's Herb Gorman on his high school varsity baseball team. And again, there's a reference to him down here as a reliever in the third inning. So that's pretty cool. There's already some great things there. Also, he's mentioned here on page 67, he and another player each pitched a 4-hitter. So that's also shows that he was quite a good pitcher in his high school days. The next reference to him, there is a mention of him over here on this side as being part of the Galleon publication staff. And also, kind of cool, here he's listed as an associate editor for his high school yearbook. So there's a couple of great references. And now, my favorite piece. Down here, he's written this. You can see it's signed Herb, and it's got that looping middle of the H, and looks a lot like his other signatures. I also checked, and there are no other Herbs in this class. So this is definitely him. And it says, "To the lad I met on Guam, we sure had fun at the beach with the nurses, didn't we? Well, Mudcat, until we meet again in Frisco." So an amazing, amazing reference. So what does a high school graduate baseball and basketball player do when he enters the Coast Guard? Well, according to this 1945 Sporting News baseball article, he becomes the manager of a baseball team in the Coast Guard. So this is the youngest, it's entitled Youngest Service Pilot Leads Coast Guard Team. And Herb Gorman is here in the photo, the third one from the left. And the article, the write-up, talks about him being signed by the Brooklyn Dodgers and sent to Montreal, where he got into one game before he entered the Coast Guard. So as we know, 6 years later, he would play his one game in the major leagues. But a great article from 1945. After Gorman finished in the Coast Guard, he came back and played minor league ball in Trois-Rivières in 1946 at the age of 22. He was an offensive star and hit over 300 for 5 minor league seasons, including hitting .351 in Spokane in 1947. In the last half of the 1951 season, however, he was sidelined with a broken foot. In 1952, first, he got married, but also early in the season, he made his only appearance in a major league uniform. On April 15th, he played with the St. Louis Cardinals, and he was a pinch hitter for the pitcher, only grounded out. He went back down to the minor leagues, and in 1953, he was playing with the AAA San Diego Padres. So not the forerunner to today's professional team, but they did have the same nickname. There were a lot of Jewish players and management on the San Diego Padres in 53. Al Richter and Murray Franklin both played with the team. Jimmy Reese, who I spoke about in an earlier episode, the impossible teammate, was one of the coaches, and it was owned by William Chick Starr, who played with the Senators briefly in the mid-1930s. The tragedy struck on April 6th, so very early in the season, where San Diego was playing a doubleheader. And in his first two at-bats, he hit 2 doubles. So he was having a great game, but he went out in the 6th inning and was immediately complaining about pains and fell to the ground. The shortstop ran out and tried to help him, but immediately called for extra help. Gorman was brought back to the dugout. Supposedly he walked his way into the clubhouse on his own, but collapsed and was in an ambulance. Unfortunately, he was pronounced dead at the hospital that day. And even more sadly, his wife was in the crowd watching the entire thing. Clarence Rowland, who was the president of the league, happened to be in the crowd watching the game that day. He said of Gorman, "Herb Gorman was an outstanding character and a credit to the game. He will be missed." And there were similar sentiments from Bill Starr, the president, and the manager Lefty O'Doul. Lefty said, "He never caused trouble, he just wanted to play. A quiet fellow who just minded his own business. It's a terrible loss." Now let's take a look at some Herb Gorman memorabilia. Keep in mind, it's very hard to find anything on Herb Gorman, and a lot of Jewish baseball collectors hunt for his items. Because he passed away so young, he would never have done card shows or autographs or anything like that, or no public appearances. And because he didn't play in the major leagues for more than the one at bat, he wouldn't have a major league card. But I was able to find quite a few items in addition to the ones that I showed you before. So let's take a look. This is a Heilbronner card, and I have a series of these that I will be showing at different times. Heilbronner put out the Blue Book, which was the information on baseball players. He had an index card that he sent to players, and they filled it out. You can see most of this one is typed, but what is here would have been in his own handwriting. This was the second one, so I'll show you in a minute how they fill these cards. So Gorman would have changed his address here. And also note something that comes up elsewhere in his biographies. At some places, he has the birth year of 1925 and the birth year of 1924. So as you can see here, he changed it. So it must have said 25 on his original card. And then this is the revised updated card. And so there are places where there are different references to his year of birth. Obviously 24 would have been correct. And you see all of the information here. You can see that he was a vet. He was in the Coast Guard after high school. You can see University of California. In his yearbook, we see that he played basketball. So this is your second favorite sport. So this is the card where, if you looked at baseball cards, and you say, where do they get all the information, all the height and all the, the look of where they're from, where they're born, all the data on the back. The Heilbronner cards in those days were where they kept all of the information. And I'll do an episode on Heilbronner at a different time. He was also Jewish. But also on the back, you can see the places where he played. So this would be sent to the office, and then there would be upgrades or changes when he played. Now, if you look at the bottom, you can also see, sadly, it says here, died 4/5/53. So this kind of shows his whole career right up to the end of his life. As I've mentioned, there are not a lot of Herb Gorman autographs because he died so young. You can see the signature here. It's got the looping H, as all of his signatures seem to have. And it's a wonderful specimen of his autograph. It's covered a little bit by that tape at the end, but I certainly am not going to tamper with it, especially if his autograph is over the piece of tape as the one below it is. And as I was looking at this, I noticed another fantastic find. You see up at the top, we have JoJo White's autograph. So for those who don't know, JoJo White was a center fielder from Georgia with the Tigers in the 1930s. So that should tell most Jewish baseball fans something. And he actually was Hank Greenberg's roommate. And Greenberg said they had a great relationship, but it really was like fighting a civil war every night. And JoJo White said that before he grew up not knowing anyone who was Jewish, and he said to Greenberg, "I thought all you Jews had horns on your head." So definitely the old anti-Semitic imagery that JoJo White grew up with. So just a bonus signature. Obviously, I got this for the Herb Gorman signature. Here are two Herb Gorman cards. You can see this one, the 1949 Hollywood Stars card. It's bigger than normal, and I'll show you from the Jewish Major Leaguer set so you can see the relative size of the card. So it's a large index card, and this one doesn't appear when you search for Herb Gorman cards, because as you can see, they got his name wrong and they called him Hubert. So this was a lucky find. I don't remember how I found it on eBay, but it was up for auction, and very few bidders, even though there are a lot of Gorman collectors, simply because the name was wrong, so he doesn't show up in a search. The other card that I have is a card that I've been searching for years, and finally got it not long ago. This is the 1952 Padres Globe printing card. This card I was so happy to find. You see somebody wrote on it that he died during that year. That I can tell you did not lower the cost of it. It was very expensive, but I had never even seen one of these in person, and I had been searching for this. This was definitely one of my Grail cards. So I am really happy to have that. Both of these cards are blank back. You can see this was possibly in an album somewhere, it looks like. But really glad to add that card to my collection. Thank you for watching this episode of In the Big Inning, the first to die, the tragic life story of Herb Gorman. Hope to see you next time on In the Big Inning.